Hi, so I will be talking about the third essay topic, which asked us to talk about the first 7 astronauts of the space program. I will first start out with Yuri Gagarin. On May 1960, the USSR launched Vostok. Unfortunately, the re-entry rockets failed and it bounced off the atmosphere. So in order to prepare for the first manned space mission, the USSR launched 2 prototypes of the spacecraft, which carried 2 dogs each. On July 28, 1960, the first prototype carrying Chaika and Lisichka exploded on launch. On August 19th, the USSR put 2 additional dogs in the spacecraft, in which the dogs were successfully launched into orbit and safely came back to Earth. This success cleared the way for the historic launch, which would carry the first man to space. The engineers decided to launch the Vostok missions into a 180 by 235-kilometer orbit. The expected duration of the journey was about 5 days, so the Vostok was provided with about 10 days' worth of supplies. On April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin went to space, without telling his family where he was going. It was now the United States' turn to launch an American into space. Instead of using dogs like the USSR, the United States used a chimp named Ham. The rocket with Ham launched in water where he almost drowned. After further testing on May 5, 1961, Alan Shepard flew on a Mercury spacecraft with the Redstone used as a missile. Unfortunately, after standing by for hours, he realized that there was no bathroom inside, because the Mercury spacecraft had just enough room for 1 person. Though Shepard did not orbit Earth, he flew 116 miles high and came back down on a trip that lasted for 15.5 minutes. Alan Shepard became the first American in space. The U.S. wanted to make sure that Alan Shepard's success hadn't just been due to extremely lucky circumstances. Therefore, they decided to put another man into suborbital flight and decided that Gus would be the man. The Mercury 4 spacecraft was named Liberty Bell because it looked like a bell. In order to ensure an optimal flight, the Liberty Bell had 3 major improvements over Shepard's spacecraft. More specifically, the control panel had been redesigned, a large window was built, and an explosive hatch had been included. On July 21st, 1961, Gus Grissom became the second American in space. Before the USSR's second flight, Korolev and medical specialists had contradicting goals. Though Korolev wanted a full day-long flight to prove that it is possible for humans to function through a day-long flight, other specialists wanted the flight limited to 3 orbits to ensure safety and precise landing. However, Korolev insisted and got what he wanted. To ensure safety, scientists monitored the sun's activity and the spacecraft was equipped with radiation measuring tools. Though there were some problems during re-entry, he survived and the mission was a success. Though the US succeeded in getting 2 men into space, they hadn't gone to orbit. So they chose John Glenn to be the first American to orbit the Earth. Because NASA had never attempted to launch a spacecraft which had a human into orbit, they first tested the idea with the Mercury 5, which sent a chimpanzee into orbit. This was done in November of 1961. Glenn's launch was originally planned on January 16th of 1962, but then postponed to February 20th due to a variety of issues, including a fuel leak. Overall, the flight was a success and Glenn orbited the Earth 3 times. Continuing with their initial success, NASA decided to put a second American into orbit. They wanted to prove that they were capable of sending a man to orbit for a full day. This time, the spacecraft combined the yaw maneuvers in order for Carpenter to have more control over it. This would allow the spacecraft to see things such as sunrises, horizons, and the Earth's landmark. However, Scott Carpenter ended up 250 miles away from his intended landing point, which caused NASA to question his capabilities. Lastly, the last of the 7 astronauts was Andrei Nikolaev. Korolev wanted to try something new. He wanted to launch 3 spacecraft so that they would be in orbit at once. Nikolaev, who would be in Vostok 3, conducted a 3-day simulated spacecraft which included centrifuge runs at the beginning and at the end. The USSR conducted a variety of tests, including suit communications and methods to maintain the spacecraft's thermal balance. Although American nuclear tests had increased the radiation levels in space, scientists still believed that the flight will be safe. Eventually, Nikolaev orbited the Earth 65 times before landing safely. Now I'll talk about the second part of the question, which asked us to talk more about a specific astronaut. So I'll be talking about Scott Carpenter. Scott Carpenter's only mission was the one discussed earlier. Maybe this was because of the controversy involving him, or maybe it was because of his interest in becoming an aquanaut. Before he had made the transition, however, he had served as the capsule communicator for John Glenn's flight. Carpenter returned to NASA and became involved in designing an underwater spacewalk. He also assisted with the design of the lunar module. In 1967, he then went back to his aquatic interests by rejoining the Navy. And that's it. Thanks.